Aloha, everyone. And I know it is late. It is late. It is late. Thank you for stopping in. Thank you for watching. And we are back with day 89 of our 100 Lives in 100 Days journey through, and we're going through my book, Walking in Aloha 5 Steps to Living Your God Potential Life, right here. So, my name is Michelle Ibala Rosa Kawano, and this is the Walking in Aloha Let's Talk Story podcast. Over the last several days, we've been talking about health and healing, and we talked about physical health, hurts, habits, and hangups, seeking professional help, and caring for your body, mind, and spirit. And so today, I want us to pause because healing often begins with a question, not an answer. The right question has the power to change everything. In Psalms 139, 23 to 24, it says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive ways in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." So David wasn't afraid to ask God the hard questions, and neither should we. One of the greatest gifts God has given us is the ability to reflect. Unfortunately, most people spend their lives reacting instead of reflecting. We rush from one responsibility to the next. One appointment, one deadline, one crisis, one distraction. And before we know it, years have passed without ever asking ourselves, how am I really doing? As a speaker and a creative coach, I've discovered that transformation rarely begins with information. It begins with awareness. People often ask me how I help someone move from fear and self doubt to living their God potential life. And my answer is simple. Before we can move forward, we have to become honest, not honest with everyone else, but honest with ourselves. Because if we don't understand where we are, how can we know where God is leading us? Let me move this down. I have the fan on, so if you hear it blowing, that's why, because summertime in Hawaii, it's getting hot. So, how can we know where God is leading us? That is why self reflection is so powerful. It helps us to slow down long enough to hear God's voice over the noise of the world, the noise like the fan. But today, I'd like to leave you with a few questions. Don't rush through them. Sit with them, pray over them, journal about them, and ask God to reveal what He wants you to see. And if you haven't gotten your book already, it is available on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble, Walmart.com, Christianbooks.com, Books a Million, and there's other places I just forgot. So go ahead and Google it, look it up. Walking in Aloha 5 Steps to Living Your God Potential Life. But let's go over the questions. Write it down and really think about it. Am I becoming the person God created me to be? What is bringing me closer to God? What is pulling me away from Him? What am I pretending isn't affecting me? What am I afraid to let go of? Where have I experienced God's faithfulness that I've forgotten to celebrate? If nothing changed over the next 5 years, would I be content with the direction my life is heading? That last question right there can be uncomfortable. Think about it. If nothing changed over the next 5 years, would I be content? Would I be okay with the direction that my life is heading? One of the reasons why I started sharing the Aloha Always framework, it's because transformation doesn't happen by accident. I didn't know the Aloha Always framework until God told me that I gave you everything in Aloha, and I started writing out what I actually walk through. Affirmations and actions, leadership and love, overcoming obstacles, health and healing, and acute awareness. Like I said, transformation doesn't happen by accident. I may have not known it, but God had his purpose and his plan. It happens intentionally. Every letter builds upon the previous one because that is the way I had to walk through affirmations and actions. I needed to affirm the actions that I had to take to start moving forward. Leadership and love. I had to lead myself out with love. I had to love myself enough to say that's enough. Overcoming obstacles. When you walk away from a domestic violence situation, when you start all over, everything isn't perfect. There was obstacles I needed to overcome. Health and healing. As I worked as I worked on overcoming those obstacles, I wanted to get away from the medications that I was taking. I wanted to be better in myself for my grandkids. And so the health and healing had to happen. And then when everything was good and I was down 80 pounds, 90 pounds, whatever it was, I needed to be acutely aware of my surroundings because there was a situation where I was at the beach and he ended up there and it freaked me out. And I went and I was talking with one of my friends and she said, "Do you realize I can follow you throughout the day, every place that you've gone?" Because I wasn't being aware of the fact that social media posting and all of that could potentially put you in danger. So I had to be aware of what I was doing and what was happening around me. That is why the Aloha Always framework is something that I share today, and I share it with people all over the world, not just here in Hawaii. Aloha is now being brought to people all over the world. Tomorrow, I speak with someone in Trinidad. That is the way God works. So, as I said, one letter builds upon the previous one. We've affirmed who we are. We've learned to lead with love. We've overcome obstacles. We've begun healing, and now we're preparing for that final step, as I said, acute awareness. Because awareness changes everything. Like I said, I had to realize what was happening and being aware of myself, being aware of my surroundings. So today, I invite you to do something simple. First, find a quiet place, turn off your phone, and take out your journal. And journal with pen, pen and paper. I know a lot of times we journal on our phones or with your iPad, but there is something about taking your pen to paper. So journal with pen and paper. Choose just one question from today's episode and ask God to speak to your heart. Then write whatever He places in your mind. Now, if you do have the book, you may be able to flip it to the pages. You may be able to write in the blanks that's provided for you in the book, right? You may be able to write in there and answer some of the questions. Now, but ask God to speak to your heart and write whatever He places on your mind. Not what you think you should write, but actually what God reveals to you. Sometimes our greatest breakthrough begins with a single honest conversation between us and God. I know a lot of my best times was on God dates where I would go and I would have a personal day with God. So tomorrow, as we begin what I believe is one of the most transformational sections of this book, Acute Awareness, we'll begin learning how to truly see ourselves the way that God sees us, not the way the world has told us to be or what we've heard and started to believe. So I am excited to take this journey with you. I'm excited to continue this journey with you. Until tomorrow, my name is Michelle Ibalarosa Kawano, and keep walking in aloha. Keep trusting God and know that everything that He does is for your best. We are created by the Creator to be creatives. And our time is now. So until tomorrow, go ahead and write. Ahuiho. God's blessings always.